The murder of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey captivated the nation and put her family under the microscope, with many speculating that her father, mother, brother, or all three were involved in her killing.
There are some cases that never really leave the public mind, not because they are the oldest or the most complicated, but because something about them feels unfinished. The murder of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey is exactly that kind of case. Nearly 3 decades have passed since the morning of December 26, 1996, when a body was discovered inside her family's home in Boulder, Colorado. 3 decades of tips, investigations, suspects, and questions, and yet the person responsible has never been identified, never been charged, never faced justice. But right now, in a way that has never quite been possible before, something is changing. Artificial intelligence and advanced DNA science are being turned toward this case, and what investigators are finding, or rather, what they are now capable of finding, is sending a wave of fresh urgency through one of America's longest-standing unsolved mysteries. To understand why this moment matters so deeply, it helps to go back to where everything began to fall apart, and it began almost immediately. When Boulder police first arrived at the Ramsey home that morning, they did not approach the scene the way a confirmed homicide demands. The assumption in those early hours was that JonBenét may have been taken from the house. A ransom note had been found inside, demanding exactly $118,000, a figure that closely matched her father John Ramsey's annual work bonus. That unusual specificity troubled investigators even then, as genuine ransom demands rarely mirror a victim's private financial details so precisely. The note was also strikingly long and dramatic, unlike anything standard in kidnapping cases, and it had been written using materials found inside the home itself. Despite all of these strange signals, because the initial theory pointed to an outside abduction, large portions of the house were left unsecured. Family members, friends, and others moved freely through the property before it was properly treated as a crime scene. Evidence was potentially disturbed, moved, or lost before anyone fully understood what they were dealing with. Later that same day, John Ramsey discovered his daughter's body in the basement. An autopsy confirmed that JonBenét had been strangled and also suffered a serious head injury. She had an unknown person's DNA under her fingernails and on her clothing. That unknown DNA would become the most important piece of physical evidence in the entire case. It did not match anyone in the Ramsey family. Male DNA unrelated to the Ramsey family was discovered in 3 different locations on JonBenét's body, and this critical evidence helped exonerate the family in 2008, though sadly 2 years after her mother Patsy Ramsey had already passed away from ovarian cancer. The family had spent years living under suspicion they did not deserve, their names tied to a crime they did not commit, while the person whose DNA was actually found on their daughter remained completely unknown. The problem was not a lack of evidence. It was a limitation of the technology available to analyze it. In the late 1990s, DNA science was in a far earlier stage. Small, degraded samples could only reveal limited information, and there was no way to trace an unknown DNA profile back to a person unless that exact person was already in a criminal database. The unknown male's DNA sat in storage for years, a critical clue that science simply was not yet equipped to fully read. Over time, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation updated more than 750 reference samples with the latest DNA technology, and officials confirmed that the DNA profile is checked regularly for new matches. But even those efforts, done with the tools of earlier years, returned nothing definitive. That is where the story begins to shift in a direction no one could have predicted when this case first began. In 2025, the application of advanced artificial intelligence has opened new avenues for re-examining the vast and complex forensic evidence collected in this case. Technologies that were once theoretical are now practical tools for forensic analysts and investigators, with machine learning, natural language processing, and advanced pattern recognition allowing for systematic analysis of everything from handwritten notes and audio recordings to complex DNA sequencing data. For cold cases like this one, where decades of files, interviews, photographs, lab results, and tip records have accumulated into an almost unmanageable volume, AI offers something genuinely new. It can move through enormous amounts of information, flag connections that human review might miss across thousands of pages, and identify patterns buried inside data that no single investigator could hold in their mind at once. In December 2023, the Colorado Cold Case Review Team completed a year-long analysis of the JonBenét case. The team digitized all evidence and created a searchable database containing tips, interviews, and nearly 2,500 pieces of evidence. That digitization project is itself a turning point. Before that work was completed, critical details from the original investigation existed only on paper, scattered across physical files that were difficult to cross-reference. Making all of that material searchable and machine-readable means that AI tools can now engage with a full picture of this case in a way that was never before possible. Investigators can run queries across the entire evidence record, looking for overlooked consistencies or contradictions that could point toward new leads. But the most significant development involves the DNA itself, and specifically a powerful method called forensic genetic genealogy. Genetic genealogy is an emerging field that combines DNA evidence and traditional genealogy to find biological connections between people. The way it works is both elegant and extraordinary. Investigators take a DNA profile from a crime scene and upload it to large public ancestry databases, the kind that millions of ordinary people use to trace their family origins or find distant relatives. If even a distant cousin of the unknown person has uploaded their DNA to one of those platforms, the system can identify a potential family connection. From there, investigators build outward through genealogical research, constructing a family tree until they narrow down to individuals who match the right profile. This is the same method that led to the arrest of the Golden State Killer in 2018, a case that had been cold for decades before genetic genealogy cracked it open. JonBenét's father, John Ramsey, has stated that if investigators use a genealogy research tool alongside modern DNA testing, he believes there is better than a 50-50 chance of identifying the killer. That is not a small statement from a man who has waited nearly 30 years. After meeting with the new Boulder Police Chief Stephen Redfern in January 2025, John Ramsey told reporters he felt there was finally competent leadership in place, saying he was impressed by the caliber of the department's new direction and that it gave him real hope. That meeting lasted close to 2 hours and focused heavily on the use of genetic genealogy to examine existing evidence. Dozens of items in the nearly 30-year-old case are now being actively tested for DNA at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation in a renewed effort to find the 6-year-old's killer. The items range from old evidence being retested due to breakthroughs in DNA technology to clues from the basement crime scene that have never undergone any forensic testing at all. That second category is particularly striking. Nearly 3 decades after the crime, there are still physical items connected to this case that have never been scientifically tested. Whether through early investigative failures, limited resources, or simple oversight, those untouched pieces of evidence have been sitting in storage, waiting. Among the most significant items now drawing attention is the weapon used to end JonBenét's life. The family's former criminal defense attorney Hal Haddon spoke openly about this at CrimeCon 2025 in Denver, stating that he has pressed hard for DNA analysis of the knots in the garrote used to strangle JonBenét. He noted that their DNA experts considered this particularly promising because the knots were fairly sophisticated and someone had to tie them. John Ramsey himself has explained his belief that whoever tied those knots could not have done so while wearing gloves, making the garrote a potentially critical source of biological material that has never been fully exploited. The cord was twisted using a broken piece of one of Patsy Ramsey's paintbrushes and a length of nylon cord. The original cord was never recovered, and one of the 3 broken pieces of the paintbrush is also still missing. But what remains may be enough. Beyond the DNA, artificial intelligence, and particularly natural language processing also hold significant potential for re-examining the ransom note, which remains one of the most debated pieces of evidence in the case. AI tools can systematically analyze linguistic patterns, writing styles, and subtle textual signals in a way that goes far beyond what earlier handwriting experts could assess manually. The note has always been strange. Its length alone, several pages when most ransom demands are brief and direct, suggested to many investigators that it was written by someone with an unusual relationship to the situation. The specific dollar amount matching the father's bonus implied either insider knowledge or remarkable coincidence. AI-assisted linguistic analysis may be able to identify patterns in word choice, sentence construction, and phrasing that point more clearly toward authorship. Boulder Police Chief Stephen Redfern released a video statement in December 2025 underscoring that the investigation remains a top priority for the department and directly acknowledged that techniques and technology around DNA testing are constantly evolving. By that point, Boulder Police had followed up on more than 21,000 tips and traveled to 19 different states to interview over 1,000 individuals with connections to the case. The scale of that investigative effort over nearly 3 decades reflects just how seriously this case has been pursued, even when it appeared to the public that progress had stalled. What makes this current moment genuinely different from previous waves of renewed attention is not just the technology itself, but the combination of factors coming together at the same time. There is new leadership at the Boulder Police Department that appears more open to outside expert collaboration. There is a freshly digitized and searchable evidence database. There are dozens of previously untested items now being processed at the state crime lab. There are AI tools capable of finding patterns across thousands of documents. And there's a genetic genealogy methodology that has already proven it can identify unknown DNA contributors through family connections, even when the person themselves has never submitted a profile to any database. The family of JonBenét Ramsey has carried this weight for nearly 3 decades. They have endured public suspicion, media scrutiny, and the particular anguish of knowing that someone committed an act of violence against their child and simply walked away. The DNA evidence that cleared them also confirmed something deeply important. Whoever did this left biological material behind. That material has never led to a name, not because the evidence was not there, but because the tools to read it fully simply did not exist. Now they do. The question that has defined this case for almost 30 years, who was inside that house and why, may finally be one that science and technology are capable of answering. And if the answer has been there all along, hidden inside evidence that no one could fully see, then the most disturbing thing about this entire story may not be what happened in December 1996. It may be how close we have always been to the truth, and how long it has taken to find the tools to reach it.